The intercom crackled above gate A32, announcing final boarding for Flight 707 to Denver. Elijah Moore adjusted his cufflinks, polished obsidian against dark skin, and stepped forward. His gait was calm but intentional, measured like everything he did. He had spent 20 years becoming invisible in rooms that weren't built for him. But today, he wasn't shrinking for anyone. The flight attendant, a white woman in her 30s with a tight bun and tighter smile, took the boarding pass from his hand. Her gaze flicked to the ticket, then to Elijah. Her smile evaporated. She scanned it once, then again. Her brow furrowed. "Sir, I'm sorry, but this isn't scanning," she said, her voice stiffening. Elijah tilted his head slightly. "Try again, please." A pause. A little too long. The kind of pause that said more than words. She scanned it a third time, this time with a deliberate slowness, as if willing it to fail. "It's not coming up in the system," she said flatly. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" "I booked it myself. First class. Yesterday," Elijah replied calmly, though the static in his ears had started to build. Behind him, a man in business casual sighed loudly. A baby cried somewhere down the terminal. The seconds stretched like an old elastic band. "I'll need to call someone over," she said, turning away before he could respond. Passengers behind him started shifting uncomfortably. A few stepped around him, their eyes glancing downward, pretending not to see. Others stared straight ahead, silent. From the corner, a child tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why are they yelling at him?" she whispered. Elijah wasn't yelling, but his presence, his skin, his height, his suit, was speaking louder than anything he could say. A supervisor arrived, blonde, stern, a laminated badge swinging from her lanyard like a verdict. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked. The attendant leaned in. Elijah could hear every word. "He says it's his ticket, but it won't scan. First class. The supervisor turned to Elijah, expression neutral. "Sir, do you have ID?" He handed it over wordlessly. She looked at it, then back at the screen, then back at him. "There's no record of this ticket under your name." "That's impossible," Elijah replied, his tone still even but his jaw tight. "Check again. Confirmation number is in the email I received." He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out his phone. Fingers steady, emotions not. The gate area had grown quieter. That kind of hush that swallows a room just before something ugly happens. The supervisor didn't take the phone. "Please step aside so we can continue boarding." Elijah remained still for a breath too long, then took a slow step sideways. The eyes followed him. A woman in yoga pants whispered something to her partner, who didn't respond but kept staring. A man 2 rows back raised his phone subtly, camera pointed just high enough. Not high enough to be bold, just enough to protect himself if things got bad. Elijah stood alone near the corner wall, framed by fluorescent lighting and outdated travel posters. A black man in a tailored suit, with a first-class ticket that suddenly didn't exist. He didn't shout, didn't protest. Not yet. Years of boardrooms and back doors had trained him to know the price of volume. But inside, a storm churned. The attendant's voice rang again over the intercom. "Final call for boarding. Flight 707 to Denver." He looked down at his phone. The confirmation code was still there. So was the pain. So was the silence. As the last passenger stepped onto the jet bridge, Elijah's eyes locked with the supervisor's. Just for a second. And in that second, something changed, not in her. In him. Because sometimes the most dangerous sound in the world is the absence of one. The doors hissed shut behind the last passenger. Elijah stood alone, still holding his phone like evidence no one cared to see. His boarding pass blinked on the screen, bold, valid, indisputable, and still unseen. The supervisor stepped aside to whisper something into her radio. A second flight attendant arrived, tall, red-haired, clipboard in hand, jaw clenched as if already preparing for trouble. "Is this the issue?" she asked curtly, nodding toward Elijah. "Ticket won't scan. He says it's his," the first replied. The new attendant didn't even glance at the screen. Her eyes were already locked on Elijah. "We've had this before," she said. "They buy cheap fake screenshots online. You people always try this." Elijah's lips parted, but no words came. Just breath. Just heat rising from the pit of his stomach. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" he asked, voice low but sharp. She blinked, not in surprise but calculation. "I said some passengers try this, fake confirmations, phony bookings. Happens all the time. We follow protocol." The lie slipped out like breath. Smooth, practiced. He could feel his heart thudding in his throat. Not rage. Not yet. Memory. 15 years old. A corner store in Atlanta. Gum in one hand, wallet in the other. Shopkeeper hovering. "Don't think I don't see you, boy." Bag checked. Pockets emptied. Lesson taught. Now 45. Suit tailored. Credit cards paid off. Still here. Elijah held out his phone again. "This is real. I booked it directly. You can call the airline. You can verify it right now." The red-haired attendant crossed her arms. "Sir, step away from the counter. I'm not moving. Security will be here in 2 minutes," she snapped, turning her shoulder to him, already over it. The supervisor glanced around nervously as passengers nearby began to shift. Some lingering, some quietly walking away. But Elijah stood still, phone in hand, breath steady, silence pressing against his chest like weight. "I've flown more miles than you've worked days," he said coldly. "And somehow, I still get treated like I'm trying to steal a seat I paid for." "We treat all passengers the same," she muttered, not meeting his gaze. "No, you don't." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale sheen across the polished floors. Behind Elijah, a janitor paused mid-sweep, watching. Above them, a screen flashed weather updates for cities Elijah had flown through 100 times. Dallas, Detroit, Charlotte, all airports where he had practiced the art of shrinking himself to survive. His voice dropped, softer now but piercing. "You didn't even check the record. You saw me, and that was enough." Footsteps echoed from the concourse. 2 uniformed security guards approaching. Elijah didn't flinch. The red-haired woman folded her arms again. Smug. "This could have gone easier." "You think this is about a seat?" Elijah said. "This is about every door that slams shut the moment I arrive." The guards stopped, uncertain. One looked at the screen, at the boarding pass, at the phone Elijah now calmly handed over. The other leaned toward the flight crew. "You call us before confirming the passenger's ticket?" The supervisor hesitated. Elijah met her eyes. She looked away. Somewhere behind them, the jet bridge creaked closed. The flight was gone. But Elijah hadn't left. Not yet. He turned toward the windows, watching the plane taxi slowly into the dark. He didn't move, didn't speak. But inside something cracked open. The second guard, slightly older, badge faded at the corners, cleared his throat. "Sir, can you verify your name and date of birth for me?" Elijah nodded once, controlled. "Elijah Raymond Moore, January 12, 1979. His voice didn't shake. But inside, the humiliation crawled beneath his skin like fire ants. He could feel the heat in his face. Not rage, not yet. Just the burn of being watched, judged, reduced. The younger officer stepped closer, polite but firm. "Do you mind showing me that ticket confirmation again?" Elijah handed over his phone. His fingers were steady now. This wasn't the first time he'd been mistaken for a threat. Only this time it wasn't a traffic stop. It was the glossy, sterile floor of an airport, under halogen lights and the eyes of strangers. He caught sight of a man across the terminal. Mid-30s, techie-looking, holding up his phone. Recording. Half hidden behind a column, the lens angled just enough to capture the scene. Another bystander walked by slower than needed, glancing, then glancing again. 2 teenage girls whispered behind coffee cups. The story was already spreading. Lisa, the supervisor, folded her arms tighter. "We checked the manifest. No one by that name in first class. No seat assigned." "You checked the manifest?" Elijah said, incredulous. Without asking me for my confirmation number? You skipped straight to calling security. We followed protocol, Lisa said. Her voice had the hollow efficiency of someone used to never being questioned. It's not personal. A short, bitter laugh escaped him before he could stop it. That's the thing. It always is. He turned to the officer. Check the number. 9KL3PZ. Direct booking. More strategic aviation account. The older officer tapped on his tablet. A moment passed. Then another. Lisa was starting to fidget. It's pulling up now, the officer said. Yeah. First class. Confirmed. Flight 707. Booked yesterday. Silence. Thick. Dense. Not a single apology. Just air. Lisa's lips parted slightly. Well, the system didn't update properly. These things happen. No, Elijah said. They happened to me. Behind him, the man recording had lowered his phone, eyes wide. Not in surprise, but in understanding. Something quiet passed between them. The younger officer shifted his weight. Sir, you're clear. You're welcome to board. Elijah looked past him to the jet bridge. The gate was closed. The red light blinked steadily above the door. You closed the flight, he said. You let the plane go. Lisa didn't answer. The announcement echoed overhead. Flight 707 to Denver has now departed. Thank you for flying with us. It wasn't just a delay. It was a denial. Elijah took his phone back, slowly, deliberately. Then his wallet, his ID, his silence. I'll make other arrangements, he said. He turned without another word, walking away, not hurried, not defeated, but carrying the weight of every unspoken apology and every glance that said, "You don't belong here." Cameras followed him as he left the gate area, the murmurs of the crowd trailing behind him like static. A janitor leaned on his mop, eyes tracking Elijah with something like reverence or pity. It was hard to tell. Outside the terminal windows, the plane's nose lifted gently off the tarmac, ascending into a sky Elijah had once dreamed would feel free. But freedom doesn't come from elevation. It comes from truth. And something in him, somewhere between ache and fire, was finally done waiting quietly. The echo of rolling luggage still lingered in his bones as Elijah stepped through the mirrored doors of More Strategic Aviation Group. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the sleek marble lobby in warm gold, but nothing about him felt warm. His reflection met him in the glass. Impeccable suit, polished shoes, jaw clenched tighter than he realized. They let the plane go. The receptionist gave a polite nod. "Morning, Mr. Moore." He nodded back but didn't smile. Not today. Glass walls framed the hallway like a museum of ambition, aviation maps, framed first flight photos, and a bold mission statement etched in chrome. We don't just fly, we disrupt. His phone buzzed. A headline flashed across the lock screen. Black passenger mistakenly removed from first-class gate. Video surfaces online. The video. Someone had posted it. He entered the executive floor. His assistant, Jordan, stood waiting outside his office, tablet in hand, brows pinched. "They're stalling again," she said. Elijah paused. "The regulators?" Jordan shook her head. "No, the airline, Western Horizon, the same one from this morning." A silence rippled between them. "We've been in negotiations for that Denver to Atlanta route for 3 months," she continued. "Legal says they've lost paperwork. Twice. FAA approvals in, funding secured. We're being iced out." Elijah walked past her into his office, the door clicking softly behind him. The room was minimalist dark wood, steel edges, the kind of space meant to project control. But his hands weren't steady. He sat slowly at the corner of his desk, not in his chair, just perched like something fragile might shatter if he moved too fast. "They saw my name," he said finally. "That's all it took." Jordan sat across from him, lowering her voice. "You think the bid's being blocked because of you?" "I don't think. I know." His eyes were distant now. "This morning wasn't a glitch. It's pattern recognition. I've lived it." "You want to go public?" she asked. He shook his head. "No. I want leverage. The weight in the air shifted. Jordan leaned forward. You're not thinking lawsuit. No, his voice was low, controlled. I want the route. Jordan blinked. You're talking about buying it outright. If they won't give us the gate, we'll buy the damn terminal. A moment of stunned silence passed. Outside, the muted hum of planes taking off carried through the windows, faint and constant. Elijah stared at the skyline, his reflection overlaying the clouds. Let them keep underestimating me, he said, more to himself than her. They always have. That's how I built this company. In rooms they didn't know I was in until I owned the table. Jordan stood, eyes sharp now. I'll call Camila. She'll want in. Elijah didn't respond right away. He turned back to his phone, replaying the gate video silently, jaw set as the screen froze on his face being questioned. He paused it. That was the moment the plane left, and the moment something in him refused to stay grounded. The conference room was all clean lines and sharp edges, sunlight flooding through high windows that overlooked the city like a watchtower. Elijah stood at the head of the obsidian table, hands flat on the surface. Around him sat his core team, legal, finance, operations, all in varying degrees of disbelief. The door clicked shut behind Naomi Bennett, his lead legal counsel, still shrugging off her coat. You called an emergency meet, said you wouldn't wait. What's going on? He didn't waste a second. We're buying the route. Jordan exchanged glances with Camila, the CFO. Naomi paused mid-pour with the coffee carafe in her hand. Which route? Camila asked, cautious. Denver to Atlanta, Elijah said. Western Horizon's mid-tier corridor. The one we've been negotiating for 3 months. Naomi set the carafe down. Elijah, they own that leg outright, and they're not selling. They've been slow walking us for a reason. They're hoping I disappear quietly, he replied, his tone razor clean. I won't. He tapped the tablet on the table. Financial projections lit up the wall behind him. Load factors, margin estimates, asset breakdowns. Camila leaned forward. You ran the math already? 3 nights ago, after their second lost application. I saw the play coming. Naomi crossed her arms. This isn't a small move. Buying out a regional route means going up against legacy carriers. Their board, their attorneys. I know. It'll be public. Loud. I know. They'll fight you. Elijah didn't blink. They already did. A heavy silence settled over the room. The kind that came not from shock but recognition. Because every person there knew what had happened at Gate A32. The video had gone viral before noon. The headline looped in the background on silent TV monitors like a heartbeat no one could mute. Camila shifted in her chair. This isn't revenge? No, Elijah said. It's strategy. If I sue, it's a headline for a week. If I take the route, it's legacy. Naomi narrowed her eyes, studying him. You're playing chess with an airline conglomerate. I'm not playing. I'm building. Let them see that the black man they tried to humiliate now controls the corridor they undervalued. Outside, a plane roared overhead, streaking across the cloudless sky. The shadow passed over the windows, long and brief like a scar. Jordan stepped forward. We'll need to draft an acquisition proposal by Friday. I want it sooner, Elijah said. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, Naomi asked. They haven't signaled any intent to sell. That's why we move first. We don't ask permission to sit at a table we can afford to buy. Camila folded her arms slowly. It's ambitious. It's overdue. Another long pause. Then Naomi let out a slow breath. Okay, let's build the damn offer. Jordan was already scribbling notes. Camila turned toward her laptop. The air in the room had shifted, uncertainty replaced by momentum. Elijah stepped away from the table, the video from the gate still fresh in his mind. He could see Lisa's face, frozen in smug indifference. Hear the silence of the onlookers. Feel the weight of every eye that had tried to reduce him. But here, in this room with this team, he wasn't reduced. He was returned to scale. He looked out the window as another plane ascended, a silver streak vanishing into the blue. This time, he would not be left behind. The city was quieter out here. No towers, no buzz, just soft porch light and the low hum of cicadas singing into dusk. Elijah stood on the front steps of his father's house, hands tucked into his coat pockets, the air cooler than expected. The screen door creaked open before he knocked. Thomas More still had the build of a man who once flew steel through clouds. Tall, proud shoulders, the silver in his beard sharp as a wingtip. His eyes met Elijah's with a quiet fire. "You didn't call." "I didn't want a phone call," Elijah said. "I wanted this." Thomas stepped aside, letting his son in without another word. Inside, the house smelled like tobacco and cedar. Aviation books lined the shelves, worn manuals, faded flight charts, a framed photo of Thomas standing beside a propeller plane from the 70s. His wings, now retired, rested in a glass box above the mantel. They sat in the living room, 2 lowball glasses, 1 bottle of whiskey, no distractions. "You've been in the news," Thomas said finally. "Airport thing." Elijah exhaled through his nose. "Yeah. They didn't know who you were? They knew exactly what they needed to know." He swirled the whiskey, the ice clinking against the glass. "Black, in a suit, boarding first class." Thomas nodded slowly, the same nod he gave when autopilot kicked in during a rough patch of sky. Same gate, different decade." Elijah looked up. "You think it ever changes?" His father didn't answer right away. He took a long sip, eyes on the shelves across the room. "I once had a supervisor call me a credit to my people, because I didn't flinch during turbulence." Elijah's mouth tightened. Thomas smirked, but there was no humor in it. "And when I filed a complaint after they passed me over for promotion the 5th time, they said I was too emotionally reactive." He shook his head. "I could fly at 40,000 feet, but they said I didn't have the temperament for leadership." "I read the case file," Elijah said quietly. "You lost. They didn't want to hear it. I wasn't the right kind of pilot, just like you weren't the right kind of passenger." A long silence stretched between them, familiar, heavy, like cabin pressure. "I know I've built something real," Elijah said. "The boardroom, the contracts, the headlines. But when she looked at me at that gate, I felt like I was 15 again, caught in the aisle seat, waiting to be allowed." Thomas leaned forward, his voice lower now. "You always flew higher than they ever thought you would. But don't let that flight become a fight to prove you belong. You already do." Elijah looked at his father for a long moment. The weight in his chest shifted slightly. Outside, a single plane crossed the night sky. Elijah watched it vanish between stars. He raised his glass. "To unlearning the altitude test." Thomas clinked his gently. "To building new runways." The offer was on the table by Monday morning. Jordan hit send at 9:01 a.m. sharp. The proposal landed in Western Horizon's inbox with enough weight to shake the coffee cups of their legal team. The acquisition pitch was aggressive, airtight, and backed by numbers they couldn't ignore. By 10:42, the story broke. Black CEO moves to buy airline route after discrimination incident at Gate A32. The headline lit up across business networks, then spilled into mainstream outlets. Elijah watched it unfold from his office, arms folded, jaw locked. The video of the Gate confrontation had already racked up nearly 4 million views. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to capture every assumption, every silence, every refusal to look him in the eye. By noon, a formal statement was released from Western Horizon. "We sincerely apologize for the regrettable customer service experience reported by Mr. Moore. We are reviewing internal procedures and have reassigned the employees involved." Reassigned. Not fired. Not named. Just quietly tucked away somewhere safer for the brand. Jordan read it aloud from her tablet, then dropped it on the table like it burned her. "This is a joke, right?" Elijah didn't respond. He was staring at the wall-mounted monitor behind her. Dozens of social media comments scrolling across a muted feed. Some were filled with fury. "This man is a hero. Buy the whole damn airline, King." Others were uglier. "Here come the race cards." Maybe if he wasn't dressed like he stole the suit. Jordan muttered. Half the country wants to crown you. The other half wants to crucify you. He turned away from the screen. Both sides are useful. Camila entered with a printed copy of the revised terms for the buyout. We're getting calls from our board. And from theirs. They're rattled. This isn't just about a route anymore. It's a PR firestorm. That's their doing, Elijah said, flipping through the terms. I'm just flying through it. The intercom buzzed. Naomi's voice came through, clipped and tense. You've got a call. Robert Halverson, CO. Western Horizon. Jordan and Camila froze. Elijah leaned forward. Put him through. A pause. Then a click. The voice that followed was smooth, deliberate. Elijah, I was hoping we could speak directly. Robert, Elijah said calmly. To what do I owe the privilege? I saw the proposal. And the headlines. Quite the campaign. This isn't a campaign. It's a correction. A beat. We'd prefer to keep this civil, Robert said. A bidding war helps no one, especially in this media climate. Then don't make it a war. You really think owning a single route gets you what you want? I don't want a route, Elijah said. I want a reckoning. On the other end, silence. Then, you've made your point. Now let's talk terms. Elijah didn't blink. You're reading them. He hung up without another word. The call was never meant to soothe. It was a temperature check. And Robert Halverson had just realized the water was rising. Camila turned to him. He's scared. Elijah stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. He should be. From outside the window, the clouds were building, thick and gray, trailing the horizon. Storm weather. And Elijah Moore had flown through worse. The boardroom lights flickered overhead as the clock struck 6:49 p.m. 11 minutes until the exclusivity clause in the bid expired. 11 minutes before Western Horizon could legally open the route up to other bidders, or worse, bury it in bureaucracy. The conference speaker buzzed as a Western exec cleared his throat. We're asking for a brief extension to review revised language in Clause 14C. Just 72 hours, standard practice. Elijah sat perfectly still at the head of the table. His hands were folded. His eyes weren't on the documents. They were locked on the time. No extension, he said. Not standard. Not acceptable. Naomi leaned forward beside him, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. The clause was reviewed 3 days ago. The wording hasn't changed. You're stalling. The line went quiet. Camila tapped her pen rhythmically against her notepad. Jordan, across the room, was already lining up the press contacts, just in case. Elijah finally stood, buttoning his jacket with calm precision. You had months, he said to the silent room and the blinking light on the speakerphone. You slow-walked this bid, blocked our filings, lost paperwork, all of it calculated. And now you want grace. Another pause on the line. Then a new voice, Robert Halverson. Elijah, he said, attempting warmth that sounded more like friction. You win, all right? You pushed hard, you played smart. We've reviewed the terms. The route is yours. Full rights. Elijah's jaw twitched. And gate A32? Yes. Gate rights included, Halverson said, reluctant. We're approving the terminal rebrand under the existing lease. It'll all be yours within 90 days. He didn't smile, just nodded once to Naomi, who slid the final papers across the table for signatures. Across town, in a high-rise wrapped in sunset and tension, Halverson signed. His pen moved like a man swallowing pride he'd never thought he'd have to taste. It was done. Back at More Strategic, the room remained still, almost reverent. Elijah rose, walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, and looked out at the city below, its lights just beginning to flicker on like runway lights at dusk. This wasn't a deal, he said quietly. It was a correction. Camila closed the folder. We're rebranding A32 as of next quarter. You'll get the first press tour. No, Elijah said. I'll go now. The terminal smelled exactly the same. 2 weeks later, Elijah stepped through the sliding glass doors at Terminal C, dressed not in a suit this time but in a black bomber jacket and jeans. He walked alone. No entourage. No fanfare. Just gravity. Passengers bustled past him, luggage wheels clicking against the tile. The terminal announcements echoed like old ghosts. Elijah followed the signs until he reached it. Gate A32. The boarding area was quiet, the flight delayed, the seats half-filled. A new attendant stood at the podium, tapping gently at her screen. Young, black, hair braided tight. She glanced up, confused for a moment. "Can I help you, sir?" He smiled. "No, I'm just checking on something I own." She blinked. "I'm sorry." He extended his hand, and she shook it, instinctively, not yet knowing who he was. "Elijah Moore," he said. Her eyes widened. Recognition hit like heat. "You're the CEO." "I am." He turned and walked slowly toward the glass, where planes sat idle against the night, the tarmac glistening beneath floodlights. The nameplate above the gate had been changed. Fresh letters. Clean font. More strategic aviation. Gate A32. He stood there a long time. This was no longer a place he was denied. It was a place he reclaimed. The click of Elijah's dress shoes echoed down the hallway of Franklin Aeronautics Academy. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he passed trophy cases filled with miniature model jets and faded group photos of cadets long since graduated. On the walls, framed posters read, "Flight is the future," and "Visibility matters." Today, he wasn't wearing a title. He was wearing responsibility. Inside room 3B, 20 young black students, some in uniform polos, some in hoodies, sat before simulators and notepads. At the front, the instructor, Ms. Avery, smiled wide as she greeted him. "They've been talking about you all week," she said quietly, hand on his shoulder. "They know the gate. They know the video." He nodded once, then turned to face them. No podium, no preamble, just presence. Elijah stepped into the middle of the room and looked around at the students. Teenagers with sharp eyes, posture half skeptical, half hopeful. One boy sat forward, elbows on knees. A girl in the back crossed her arms but didn't blink once. "I'm not here to tell you how hard it's going to be," Elijah began. "You already know that." The room stilled. "I'm here to tell you it's not about taking a seat. Because when you take something, they can move it, reassign it, revoke it, redefine it." He paused. "You build the plane." A ripple moved through the room, barely audible, but alive. "They said I didn't belong in first class, that my ticket couldn't be real. But that wasn't new. That was just the latest chapter in a story they've told us for generations. You don't look like the pilot. You don't sound like the owner. You must be in the wrong seat." A student raised his hand. "How do you keep your cool when they come at you sideways, but smile while doing it?" Elijah met his eyes. "You breathe, then you build. Dignity isn't silence, but it's choosing your moment. The fight isn't in shouting. It's in showing up and still building." Another voice, this time the girl in the back. "But what if they shut every door?" He smiled gently. "Then make your own runway." Montage. A TV screen glows inside a break room. Lisa sits alone, her name badge now pinned to a different company, watching Elijah speak on a news segment. Her expression is unreadable. The sound is muted, but her face isn't. Cut to a jet bridge. Elijah walks it slowly, the boarding pass already scanned. No hands raised to stop him. The new branding glows behind him. More strategic aviation etched across the gate signage. Cut again. A flight attendant, black, early 30s, smiles as he enters. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Moore." He nods, settling into seat 1A. No tension in the air this time, just quiet assurance. He gazes out the window as the plane taxis toward the runway. Behind him, voices laugh. No one stares. No one questions. He closes his eyes. What they tried to deny, he now designs. The cabin lights glowed soft and amber as Elijah stepped onto the plane. His footsteps landed quiet against the jet bridge carpet. But the weight behind them, years, names, stares, refusals, echoed louder than steel. He paused just past the threshold. eyes scanning the interior. Polished chrome edges, soft leather seats, mahogany trim on the bulkhead. More Strategic's brand mark, a stylized set of wings, stitched into the headrests. Not borrowed space, not lease status. This was his fleet now, his sky. "Good evening, Mr. Moore," said the flight attendant at the front. She was young, confident, locks pulled back into a sleek bun. The name tag read Maya. Her smile wasn't cautious or performative. It was grounded, honest. "Welcome aboard," she added. He nodded. "Thank you for being here." She tilted her head slightly, sensing more than was said. "It matters who opens the door." He held her gaze for a second longer, then moved down the aisle. No one stopped him. No one questioned the ticket. No one looked twice, except perhaps with recognition, not suspicion. He slid into seat 1A. Legroom for days. Window view. Peace. Outside, the tarmac glistened under halogen lights, puddles reflecting engines and movement and power. Across the gate, signage glowed above the terminal glass. More Strategic. Denver hub. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the quiet vibrate through him. Not long ago, this was the very place he'd been pulled aside, treated as an error, a mistake in the system. And now the system bore his name. A voice chimed through the intercom. "Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff." The seatbelt clicked into place. The engines began their hum, low and rising like breath before a leap. He inhaled through his nose, exhaled slowly. Maya passed by and gently adjusted the overhead bin, then leaned in slightly. "Anything you need, Mr. Moore?" He looked up at her, expression calm, eyes sharp. "Just altitude." She smiled and continued down the aisle. Outside the window, the plane turned toward the runway, taxi lights casting elongated shadows across the asphalt. Rain threatened the glass, soft at first, then heavier, blurring the horizon. Still, the wings held steady. Elijah leaned back into the seat, fingers relaxed now, no tension in his shoulders. This moment wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the exhale that followed the climb, the stillness after surviving. As the jet lifted off, he whispered under his breath, "We ascend." And this time, there was no one there to stop him.